Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. Of course, Niall Stanage back in the hot seat. Nice to see you.
Always great to see you, Robby. Back in the hot seat at short notice. Our friend Lindsay has been snarled in traffic chaos.
Waylaid in some way.
Exactly.
Who knows where she travels for her travel show. I'm not sure if that's what she's doing this weekend.
I'm not sure, but I have to get my rising sneakers on at short notice and run down here, so it's good to see you.
Well, glad to have you here.
Coming up on Rising, Iran has selected the late Ayatollah Khamenei's son to be the country's new supreme leader, a pick President Trump last week deemed, quote, unacceptable.
Plus, the New York Times is reporting that Texas State Congressman James Tallarico knew in advance his interview with comedian Stephen Colbert would not air on TV, and that donations poured into Tallarico's campaign after the fact.
And Fox News is now apologizing after it aired an old clip of President Trump while covering the dignified transfer ceremony of US soldiers killed in the Middle East. But first, Robby, what is on your radar?
Let's get to it. Something truly awful happened outside Gracie Mansion over the weekend, but don't expect to get all the facts from Zohran Mamdani after improvised explosive devices were hurled at protesters by two individuals with Muslim extremist ties. Mamdani didn't even bother criticizing them by name, instead focusing his attention on right-wing provocateur Jake Lang, who had organized the protest that was targeted. Now, hurt people's feelings, you'll be denounced by name. Attack people on behalf of Muslim extremism, you'll barely merit a mention. Here is what happened. On Saturday, Lang, a far-right rioter who was previously charged and regrettably pardoned for January 6 related offenses, led a protest outside Mamdani's mayoral residence. Lang's protest was against what he describes as the Islamification of New York. There was a roast pig at the protest. Offensive stuff. But Lang is known for pulling stunts like this, and he's previously called for burning the Quran, that sort of thing. It's obnoxious and it's offensive to peaceful Muslims, though he has the First Amendment right to peacefully protest in the public square. Lang was, however, met by counter-protesters, including 19-year-old Ibrahim Qayoumi and 18-year-old Emir Balat. They are, according to the New York Post, fanatics who self-radicalize and then travel to Turkey and Saudi Arabia to actually learn tactics from ISIS. The explosives that they hurled at Lang's group are a type of bomb frequently used by ISIS terrorists. Luckily, it did not explode, and it's not clear it was built correctly and even could have exploded. Law enforcement is looking into all that. Now, officers have also apprehended Balat and Qayoumi, who admitted that their motivation was feeling insulted about their religion. Let's be absolutely clear. Every American has the right to mock Islam, or Catholicism, or atheism, or Buddhism, or Mormonism, or the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. The First Amendment protects religious expression and anti-religious expression in equal measure. Violence and terrorism are never permissible, even to offensive speech about protests. So one might have expected media coverage of these events to focus on the wrongness of the would-be terrorists rather than the offensiveness of the protesters. But you'd be wrong. Aside from the conservative New York Post, attention was generally focused on Lang rather than on the assailants. For instance, this tweet from NBC New York, it reads this: multiple arrests made after suspicious devices found outside Gracie Mansion, home of Mayor Zohran Mamdani, during anti-Islam rally and counter-protest. Well, that makes it sound, of course, like the anti-Islam side made the bombs. No, the pro-Islam side threw the bombs at the anti-Islam side. Conservative attorney Mike Davis writes on X, "This is the most dishonest reporting we've seen in a long time. Two jihadis threw two IEDs into a crowd of anti-Zohran protesters on video. Yet NBC reports these bombs were found and implies they belong to the conservative protesters. Truly a new low in journalism." Oh, he's correct. Mayor Mamdani similarly focused on Lang. Here was the mayor's statement on X. Yesterday, white supremacist Jake Lang organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. Such hate has no place in New York City. It's an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are. What followed was even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. The attempt to use an explosive device and hurt others is not only criminal, it is reprehensible and the antithesis of who we are. Notice how that statement doesn't actually state what really happened, that the counter-protesters were responsible for the bombs. Notice also how he calls out Lang by name and says that this protest is bigoted and racist and an affront to New York City's values and to unity and so on, but isn't call Qayoumi and Balat out by name. And look, I agree that Lang is bigoted against Muslims, but I think terrorism is maybe a worse crime than bigotry, just a little bit. Now, it's not often I agree with her, but I have to say Laura Loomer's right about this. She writes on X, the media keeps trying to make it seem like someone tried to bomb Zohran Mamdani when in reality it was Muslim Mamdani supporters who threw a bomb at Jake Lang. So let's not be so timid about calling out Islamic terrorism. How about that, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we'll have a vigorous disagreement to kick things off this Monday, Robbie. I don't really agree with that framing of the issue. The instigator here was Jake Lang. He was the one who decided to bring this protest around, a very small group of people, I'm glad to see, but one that was obviously Islamophobic and bigoted by its nature, and as you acknowledge, he is bigoted against Muslims. The other point is that the first attack here appears to have been a pepper spray being discharged by Lang supporters against the counter-protesters. Now, then you had the devices being thrown. Nobody is defending the devices being thrown. Mamdani, as you noted, said that it was never acceptable, criminal and reprehensible. So, and also just as a tangent, I don't take the New York Post's word for it as to exactly what the background of these two gentlemen were, given that I think the New York Post has been often fairly ludicrous in its Mamdani-related criticisms. But the point is, this was instigated by Jake Lang, and therefore I think it is perfectly valid for the media coverage to focus on that point.
I mean, instigated. He has the right to organize a protest. It could be about whatever ridiculous thing he wants.
Right.
Anyone pepper sprayed anyone should be arrested and prosecuted, and etc. But to say that, I mean, you're saying instigated, that's almost like saying what they deserve to have bombs thrown at them?
No, I'm not saying that. But I mean, and I just said it's not acceptable, and I quoted Mamdani saying it's not acceptable. But the point is, the reason there was
These are
a
equally
flashpoint.
unacceptable things. Like protesting, it's a distasteful kind of protest, I agree. But it's not, it is, like Mamdani criticized that more strongly than he criticized the use of the bombs. And the media coverage, and it's not really just him, the tone of the media coverage, to the extent that, I think Brad Lander, is that his name? He was another
New York City
mayoral hopeful. He actually put out a tweet saying, I got this wrong initially, because he thought, based on the coverage, that the Lang group had done the bombs. And so he tweeted a follow-up saying, I was misled based on the coverage. That was from the counter-protester side, and that's so good on him for making that correction. But I understand why he came away from that impression. I was really struck by looking at the media coverage, how it assumed, and then it would make a casual reader think the Lang group had made the bombs.
Well, if it makes the casual reader think that, it's obviously wrong.
Yeah.
But the escalation here, both in terms of the initial protest itself and who first crossed the line, is the Lang group. It's the Lang group that pepper sprayed the counter-protesters. That does not make it legitimate to throw what I see the police commissioner calls an improvised explosive device. She says it was not a hoax, it was not an innocuous thing, and that's wrong. Mamdani has said it's wrong. He has said it's wrong in fairly emphatic terms. I don't really see where the core of the outrage lies.
Well, and also the pair that threw the bombs, again, maybe we need to wait for additional verification beyond the New York Post. I don't know if it was reported anywhere else. That's the report I saw. But that they had said, they've confessed to doing it to police, that the motive, it was not like self-defense, like there was pepper spray coming at them and then they hurled something in self-defense, but that this was planned because their religion was being offended. And that is, frankly, the kind of idea, and again, I am not, but I have a kind of Christopher Hitchens attitude toward all religion, to be perfectly honest.
Sure.
Like their religious view that they have a right not to be offended does not trump our First Amendment. That would be true against any other religious group or any identity group of any kind. And so I take offense to the idea of people coming in and saying, my religion can't be offended and I can take violent means
I agree.
to prohibit you. That is very wrong to me.
No, look, I have a fair amount of sympathy with that view. I do not think that religions of any description should be immune to mockery, and I certainly don't think they should be immune to criticism. Religion to me is a very different issue from race or gender or something, because it is a code of belief that one chooses to adhere to. Now, many people are born into the religion they adhere to, but that's not the point. The point is, it is a belief that is as can be as validly criticized as any form of political belief or other belief. But I don't really have a massive problem with Mamdani's response to this, which I think was clear-cut. And as I say, I think Lang's group were the primary instigators in this confrontation.
Well, we'll discuss Mamdani a little bit more later.
We will.
And some other topics. Lindsey Graham lighting up the MAGAverse online with his promise of regime change in Iran. We'll be right back.